Greetings everybody, 'tis I, 480 volts. Every series of video games has that one game that's sort of like the black sheep. Now you get your first game, it sort of decides how it wants to be. Usually by the third game they've sort of figured out how the formula is going to be. But there's always like, they throw one extra game in there somewhere. It's usually the second, though sometimes it can be later on down the line, like in the case of Final Fantasy, it can be the 8th game in the series. That's just different. It just does things different. It's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily worse than the rest of them. It's just different. Today we are going to talk about the black sheep of the Legend of Zelda series, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Yeah, this game.
The history is simple. Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of the original The Legend of Zelda, and the evil genius behind almost all things Nintendo, intended to make Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link fundamentally different from its predecessor. A different team was assembled to develop the game. However, Miyamoto was the producer, and Takashi Tezuka returned to write the story and script. Zelda 2 was directed by Tadashi Sugiyama, for whom it was the first project at Nintendo. The game was released in Japan for the Family Computer Disk System in January 14th, 1987, and then for the Nintendo Entertainment System in September 26, 1988 in the PAL region, and December 1st, 1988 in the North American region. Like its predecessor, the story of Zelda 2 is told through a text monologue if the player remains on the title screen long enough. After Ganon was destroyed, Impa told Link a sleeping spell was cast on Princess Zelda. She will wake only with the power of number 3 Triforce sealed in a palace in Hyrule. To break the seal, crystals must be placed in statues in 6 well-guarded palaces. Link set out on his most adventuresome quest yet. It's only his second adventure, dude, chill. I suppose the overall story doesn't really matter to the game, but while researching the basic info I normally tend to talk about in my reviews, I found that the complete summary of the story is quite a bit more complex than this text monologue leads you to believe. So if you don't mind indulging me, I'll go ahead and give you the lowdown. Several years after the events of the first Zelda game, the now 16-year-old Link, wait, just how old was he in the first game? Notices a strange mark on the back of his left hand, exactly like the crest of Hyrule. He seeks out Impa, who takes him to the North Castle where a door has been magically sealed for generations. Impa places the back of Link's hand on the door and opens it, revealing a sleeping girl. Impa tells Link that the girl is Zelda, not the Zelda from the first game, the princess of Hyrule from long ago and the origin of The Legend of Zelda. See, long ago, Zelda's brother tried to force her into telling their recently deceased father's secrets concerning the Triforce. Princess Zelda refused to reveal its location, and the prince's wizard friend, in anger, tried to strike her down with a spell. Zelda fell under a powerful sleeping spell, but the wizard was unable to control the wildly arcing magic and was killed by it. The prince, filled with remorse and unable to reverse the spell, had his sister placed in the castle tower, hoping she would one day be awakened. He decreed that princesses born to the royal family from that point on would be named Zelda in remembrance of this tragedy. We can therefore conclude that the Zelda from the first game was a direct descendant of this Zelda, and we can make the same assumptions about all of the other Zeldas that the franchise will introduce to us. Impa says that the mark on Link's hand means that he is the hero chosen to awaken Zelda. She gives Link a chest containing 6 crystals and ancient writings that only a great future king of Hyrule can read. Link finds that he can read the document, even though he has never seen the language before. It indicates that the crystals must be set into statues within 6 palaces scattered all over Hyrule. This will open the way to the Great Palace, which contains the Triforce of Courage. Only the power of the combined Triforces can awaken Zelda. Taking the crystals, Link sets out to restore them to their palaces. Meanwhile, Ganon's followers seek to kill Link, as sprinkling his blood on Ganon's ashes will bring Ganon back to life. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the gameplay. The basic objective is very similar to the previous game, with a few minor differences. You, as Link, must travel to 6 different palaces, instead of 8 dungeons, reach the end of the palaces, defeat the boss, place the crystal in the statue, as opposed to collecting the Triforce pieces, and once all of the crystals has been placed, enter the final area, the Great Palace, reach the end, defeat the bosses, pick up the Triforce, save the pretty girl, watch the two embrace behind the curtain, and enjoy the credits. Sounds more or less like the first game, right? And then you actually play the game, and yes, it's quite a bit different. The overworld of Hyrule is played from a topographical viewpoint, while the palaces and caves are side-scrollers. Link has apparently been working out with Super Mario and now has a jump and duck feature. There's even an itty-bitty speck of platforming from time to time. As for the combat, Link no longer has a boomerang or arrows or any of those things, but he is still rocking his old sword. Like the first game, while at full health, the sword shoots a beam of energy ahead. If your health is any less than full, the sword is reduced to close-range stabbing. However, I think that some of the material that was used to forge this sword was used centuries later to construct Samus's blaster, because just like Metroid, the energy beam only travels a few feet in front of you and then stops. And unlike Metroid, there is no upgrade to this sword to make it travel all the way. Not that it would really make much difference, as the energy beam is really only effective against early enemies. Most of the later enemies have armor that can withstand such an attack and can only be damaged by the close-range thrust. You can learn a few new moves like the downward and upward thrust, which are pretty useful. All in all, Link is definitely a little less stiff than he was in the first game. This adds an advantage to the fighting, but does not by any means make it easier than the first game. So I mentioned that Link has a duck feature. This should worry you, as the developers surely wouldn't have put that feature in the game without making it a necessity of some kind. Like the first game, Link can deflect most types of projectiles with his shield, but a lot of enemies will have a high attack and a low attack. The high attacks are deflectable by standing in front of them, while the low attacks are deflectable by, you guessed it, ducking in front of them. Now, since most of the later enemies require you to fight them at close range, it can be very difficult to predict which type of attack they're going to use. Also, a lot of the enemies have shields of their own, which they lower and raise, thus determining if you should hit them with a standing attack or a ducking attack. Now, the more you fight certain enemies, the more you'll kind of get a feel for how you should go about attacking, but some enemies like these jerkholes still give me a hard time and can whoop my butt. Now let's talk about perhaps the biggest difference between this game and the first game, and, as I understand it, most Zelda games. This game takes a rather RPG approach of things. Killing enemies rewards you with experience points. Receive enough points and you level up, allowing you to boost your attack power, your magic levels, or your life bar. Sometimes enemies will drop blue jars instead of XP, which will refill a little bit of your magic. Once in a while they may drop a red jar, which refills all of your magic. They might also drop a point sack, which gives you a large number of XP. The point is, you really need to spend time fighting enemies and grinding for XP. This game is no cakewalk, and you really don't want to risk getting a game over. While on the world map, if you stick to the dirt path, you will not find any enemies. However, if you venture off the dirt path, enemies will appear around you, and walking into them takes you into battle. So, you are able to grind for XP on the world map whenever you need to. All of your stats will max out at level 8. I highly recommend grinding to get to that point as soon as possible. Besides grinding, there are also some items you can collect to aid you in your journey, such as the hammer, which allows you to break through rocks blocking the pathway on the overworld, the flute, which playing at certain points on the overworld opens up secret areas, the raft, which allows you to sail across certain points of the sea, etc. There's even a pair of boots that turns Link into freaking Jesus and lets him walk across water. You can also find a few heart tanks, which work just like they did in the first game, as well as magic containers, which do the same thing as heart tanks, but for your magic. There are also towns you can visit. In these towns, you can talk to people who give you hints. Yeah, they're about as good as the hints in the first game. Each town has its number of useless people who are either uninformed or unwilling to help you in any way, shape, or form. However, there are some people in each town that you do want to keep an eye out for, such as the old woman who refills your magic, the young lady who refills your health, and the old man who teaches you a new spell. And then in this one town, you meet this guy. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. As mentioned, there are magic spells to learn. These are basically buffs that Link can cast on himself, such as the jump spell, which allows you to jump higher, letting you reach new areas, the shield spell, which buffs your defense, the fairy spell, which turns Link into a fairy and allows him to fly all over the action screen, and many other spells. Each of these spells will last as long as you remain on that action screen, but as soon as you enter the next screen, the effect is lost. As far as navigation goes, it's not quite as easy to get lost in this game as it was in the first game. The world of Hyrule seems to be a bit smaller this time around. Well, at least on the overworld. The palaces can get a little tricky. Like Metroid, these are all mazes with multiple areas to explore, almost all dead-ending, causing you to have to backtrack the way you came in. Like the first game, there are keys in each palace to collect that opens up doors along the way. The order of palaces is managed a bit more tightly this time around. You need many of the items, hammer, flute, raft, etc., to reach the different palaces, and some of the bosses require very specific magic spells to beat, so you really have to do everything in a certain order. In fact, the first boss of the Great Palace requires the Thunder spell to be cast before you can even damage it, so if you don't have the Thunder spell, you can't finish the game. Interestingly enough, every time you beat a boss, it explodes in fiery light and you can momentarily see Link's shadow against the wall. Upon defeating the Thunderbird, a strange old man gives Link the Triforce, the lighting in the room changes, and Link's shadow comes to life, and you must fight it. Apparently, Link has to defeat the darkness within himself or something, I don't know. No context whatsoever is offered here. Just stand off to the side and stab your sword like crazy. Shadow Link will stupidly run into it every time. Graphically, this game is okay. Standard NES graphics, nothing too special. I will say that Link's sprite on the action screen is easier on the eyes than his sprite in the first game. The music was composed by Akira Nakatsuka. The soundtrack is definitely more enjoyable to me than the first game, although a lot of that is due to the awesome remixes that we've gotten in the Smash Bros. Games. Before beginning this game, I announced in a Retro Games dedicated Facebook group that I was preparing to play this game. I received a lot of comments, suggestions, and opinions from people. Based on those comments, I've concluded that most people either love this game or hate it. There really is no middle ground. So, since I like to be different, I'll just go ahead and be the first person that I am aware of to say that this game is meh. Not great, not horrible, just kinda there. I've played it, probably won't ever play it again.
So anyway, that was Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. It wasn't as bad as I actually expected it to be, so the next game of the Zelda series, whenever the heck I get around to it, because it'll probably be a while, is A Link to the Past, and I've heard nothing but good things about that game, so I'm excited. From here on out, I think the Zelda series is going to be very, very good and enjoyable, so look forward to that. But like I said, it'll be a while. I've got other stuff I want to get to. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Louloubieberful. I was featured in one of her videos very recently. It was an international accent tag, something she's been doing for quite a while now. She gets people together from different regions and countries and gets them to talk about their accents and some of the different things about their countries. And I was featured in an all-American episode, so you get to hear me talk about my accent. You get to hear me and a few other Americans as we butcher up the English language, because that language is already a debauchery and our version of it is the worst, so there you go. So once again, the link for that is in the description, Louloubieberful. Please check out her channel. She has a second channel too, Advice with Lou. I have the link for that in the description as well. Check out her channels. Her content's very good. It's very enjoyable. Subscribe if you like it. I think you probably will. So anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. Hit the comments and tell me why you liked it. If you didn't like it, well, tell me why you didn't like it. Maybe hit the thumbs down button. I don't care. Or you could always subscribe. You know, I won't object to that. I'm not forcing you. I'm just saying I don't object to it. And I will see you in the next video. Peace out.